to show you guys how much fondant is needed to cover a 4-inch, 6-inch, and an 8-inch cake. So I have my scale here and I'm going to set it to pounds because we're in America and we still use pounds. And I have about 3 pounds and 5 ounces of fondant here. This is black marshmallow fondant. I can't use this yet. I have to add a little bit of Tylose powder to this. So I'm going to sprinkle some on here and then knead that in there and let it sit for about 20 minutes before I use it. I have a video showing you how I get marshmallow fondant to the correct consistency, and I will link that below, but it's too soft right now to cover a cake, so let's just let that sit for about 20 minutes or so. And after it sits, you can see how much smoother it is, minus those little sugar balls that I have in there, so let me remove those. And now I just want to get my cake out of the refrigerator. This is an 8-inch cake that's about 4.5 inches tall, and I'm getting some piping gel all along the side of the cake. And I just want to knead this fondant again before I put it on the cake. I don't have the entire 3 pounds there. I just broke a piece off, sprinkled down some cornstarch, and I'm going to roll this out. Now, again, I have a video where I go into detail on how I cover cakes with fondant, and that will be linked below. But I'm rolling it out about 1/4 inch thick and sprinkling down some cornstarch so it doesn't stick to the countertop. And then I got my cake and I'm going to carefully lift this up and place it on top. And I like to seal the top edge so the fondant doesn't break or tear. And then I'm carefully pulling the fondant away and smoothing down these wrinkles. And again, I go into detail on how I do this in my video on how I cover a cake with fondant. I'm cutting off the excess and removing that. And then I'm using my fondant smoother to press the fondant against the side of the cake and down at the bottom to seal it. And then I use my weird little pinch technique to get a nice sharp edge on the top, and just using my fondant smoother to smooth it out, and then cutting off the excess and removing that and refining it one more time with my fondant smoother. Now, since this is black fondant, I'm using some Crisco shortening and I'm painting a light coating of shortening all along the sides and the top of the cake, just to get rid of those cornstarch marks and to deepen the color of the fondant. I do have a video where I show you how I do this. That will be linked below. But that Crisco is going to reabsorb back into that fondant. It won't be as shiny and it's really going to deepen the color and make it look so nice. Then I take a clean paper towel and remove the excess, and I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. Now I'm taking this extra fondant that I cut away from that cake, pop that back in the microwave to soften it up, and then I am kneading all of that fondant back together. And I'm going to break off a little piece. I don't need the whole thing to cover a 6-inch cake. So I got the 6-inch cake that's about 4.5 inches tall. I got that out of the refrigerator. And again, I'm getting the piping gel along the side. And then I'm rolling the fondant out about 1/4 inch thick. And then I'm getting my 6-inch cake and covering it. Now you can see how I rolled out this fondant wider than the cake. Like it's a lot more fondant than I actually needed, but it's better to have too much fondant and cut the excess away than not to have enough, because then you have to pull it and stretch it to try to cover the open spaces and it just messes it all up. So it's better to have a little bit more. So I'm refining this cake just like I did on the other one, using my weird pinch technique to get the sharp edge and using my fondant smoother to smooth it out. Trim off and remove the excess, and then refine it one more time with my fondant smoother, and then I'm going to paint that light coating of the shortening on there. You can use a steamer as well if you have a steamer. I just prefer to do it this way. Use a dry paper towel to remove the excess, and let's put that back in the fridge. Now I pop that fondant in the microwave for about 10 seconds to soften it up. Now this is my 4-inch cake. It's about 5 inches tall, and again I'm doing the same process, getting the piping gel along the side, then rolling that out and covering the cake. And these small cakes are much more challenging to cover with fondant because you get so many more wrinkles, so you have to work in small sections. I cut off the excess because it was kind of too heavy and pulling it down, but do you see how I'm working in small sections? Pull it out wherever there's a wrinkle and then just go all the way down to the bottom of the cake. And I'm doing the same process, so you could see I did have more fondant than I needed to be able to cover this 4-inch cake. And then I'm just cutting away and removing the excess and deepening the color again with that Crisco shortening, and removing the excess with a dry paper towel and putting that back in the refrigerator. So now let's see how much fondant I have left over. And we started with just over 3 pounds and now I have just over 1 pound. So I used 2 pounds of fondant to cover all 3 of these cakes. So there you go. We got 3 cakes covered with 2 pounds of fondant. Now, Whenever I'm covering a bunch of cakes with fondant, I always have a little bit more than I need. So you can see I started with like 3.5 pounds of the black fondant in this video, and I ended up using 2 pounds to cover the cake. And you can see as you put the fondant over the cake, it stretches out and you always have some excess. But it's just the nature of the beast with fondant that you usually need a little bit more when you're covering cakes with it. And then I just save the extra fondant to use for decorations. Now, each batch of my marshmallow fondant yields about 2 pounds of fondant, and I have tons of videos showing you how I make my fondant, and I will link that below. But I always sing the praises of marshmallow fondant. It is just so much smoother and it's easier to work with than store-bought fondant. Let me get rid of this. Ah. Store-bought fondant is just way too soft. It stretches, it cracks, it gets elephant skin. It's super annoying to work with. When you cut it, it drags, and maybe some people have success with it, and that's fine. But I personally prefer to use marshmallow fondant for all of my cakes. And then with the excess fondant, I've shown in so many of my videos, but I have this container that I got on Amazon, and I separate my extra fondant by color. I have greens, blues, purples, reds, orange, yellows, blacks, whites, and neutrals, browns, and I keep them all in Ziploc bags and then store it in this airtight container. I will continue to use the fondant while it's still pliable at room temperature. If it's out of that bag at room temperature and rock solid, then I throw it away. But if I can still squeeze it when it's cold, then it's still usable. And again, I have videos that go into detail on how I cover cakes with fondant, how I work with fondant, how I make fondant decorations, and I will link them all below. So the amount of fondant that you need is going to depend on the size and the height of the cakes. These cakes that I covered, the 4-inch cake was about 5 inches tall, and then the 6-inch and the 8-inch cake were about 4.5 inches tall. So it's going to vary. How much fondant that you need is going to vary depending on the size and height of your cake. So this 2 pounds of fondant covered a 4-inch, 6-inch, and an 8-inch cake, but it would also cover a 5-inch and a 9-inch cake, or a 10-inch cake. So it all depends on the size and the height of the cake that you are covering. So I hope this helped you guys out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And just a reminder, I do have ebooks with all of my favorite recipes. I have my best scratch pound cake recipes, my doctored cake mix recipes, all of the filling and buttercream icing recipes that I use, along with my favorite fonts and my favorite numbers PDFs, so they will all be linked below. And I also have a Cake Academy membership program where I can help you elevate your cakes to the next level. All that information is in the description. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. My link is down below. And I would love it if you would keep in touch on socials, and you can check out my website. And if you want to stick around so you can watch this video next, and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.